All right, hey, what's up, everybody? Mike Lindsley back with you here at Rosie's Corner, the official pizza shop of the ML Sports Platter. If you're in and around Central New York, this place is a must-stop. Pizza, wings, hot and cold subs. They've got Taco Tuesdays back, the ice cream truck opening up very soon with the weather. And also, here's the other big thing with Rosie's. They're now available on Grubhub, and their gift cards are always available. They've got their theme days. I mentioned Taco Tuesday. I'm here on a Friday. They've got the fish sandwich, the fish dinner, mac and cheese. You can get it with coleslaw. That's their big thing on Friday. Get here to Rosie's Corner. The product is amazing. They did great at Wing Fest. Come try their garlic parm wing, which is one of my favorite wings I've ever had in my life. They really do a great job. So hats off to Jason, Jody, and crew here at Rosie's. And don't forget to take some desserts home as well. Go like Rosie's Corner on Facebook. All right. The Washington Nationals are an absolute disaster. There's a couple of different things I want to talk about here with this Washington franchise. You know, I went into this season looking at the big picture, feeling a lot more confident than I have in past years, even though I've picked them and been tricked multiple times to win a pennant and go to the World Series. I picked them actually to win the World Series the last few years. This year I didn't get tricked into that level of prediction, but I did get tricked into winning the division. And the reason I thought that this year was going to be a good one for Washington, it's very simple. Bryce Harper is not there. Now, I'm not blaming Bryce Harper for anything. I'm not blaming him for the bad playoff losses. I'm not blaming him for anything. But sometimes when you have a superstar player, the caliber of Bryce Harper, plus he's a very polar athlete, you take a look at Bryce Harper, everything becomes about him. There are positives to having a superstar like that. There are also negatives to having a superstar. And then the big negative is that it's always about him. I thought, okay, they're not going to sign Bryce Harper. They're not going to give him $300 to $400 million. They actually offered him $300, so I stand corrected there. But they're not going to give him $325, $330, $400, whatever. And with him not being there and now in Philly, you kind of look at this roster, you're like, okay, they still have Trey Turner. They still have Anthony Rendon. They still have Victor Robles and Juan Soto. I saw Victor Robles play a ton in Syracuse when he was a Syracuse Chief. I love his game. And when you look at it, 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases probably this year. Juan Soto's going to win an MVP or two coming up. Anthony Rendon's having just another really, really good year. But yet here are the Nationals well under 500, and they caught the New York Mets after the Mets were swept by the Miami Marlins. It was a perfect opportunity at home for the Washington Nationals to say, you know what? Let's step it up. Let's win some games. Let's turn the tide here a little bit. Instead, the Washington Nationals were a complete and utter disaster against the New York Mets. The Mets kicked them in the teeth. They were hitting home runs. They were beating up their pitching. And I'm telling you right now, I would make a major move if I was the Washington Nationals. And I think it starts with the manager, although I don't like the GM and Mike Rizzo, and more on him in a minute. But I would make a change now. I think that the guy you need to get in Washington is Joe Girardi. Here's a guy who knows how to manage a bullpen. He's fairly decent with young players. His intensity would actually be matched by the likes of Strasburg and Scherzer and other players. You do have some intense personalities in that clubhouse. I think he would relate well to them. He's well respected. He's won a National League Manager of the Year award. He's won a World Series. I think he'd be a really, really good fit. Now, look, the Doolittle and Rosenthal deals have been a disaster for Mike Rizzo, as has the deal for Adam Eaton. Adam Eaton can't stay healthy. He's not producing. And at the time, they traded their top two pitching prospects, Ronaldo Lopez and Lucas Giolito. And Lucas Giolito right now is kicking ass for the White Sox. As we record this, last night he had a 9-strikeout complete game shutout against Houston, the best team in baseball. He was moving pitches all over the board. His fastball had late life. His slider was crazy good. His changeup was unbelievable. It was darting in and perfectly painting the strike zone. I'm telling you right now, Lucas Giolito might not turn into Max Scherzer, and certainly Ronaldo Lopez might not turn into Justin Verlander, but for crying out loud, at the time, you don't give up your top two pitching prospects for a guy like Adam Eaton. If anything, if you're going to give up your two top pitching prospects and prospects overall, you want to trade him for a major frontline starter. You want to maybe trade him for a frontline all-star player, an MVP caliber type player, a five-tool guy, a guy who's going to help induce some major production into your lineup. Think of it this way. If you trade your two top pitching prospects to Cleveland, what do you want back? You want Francisco Lindor back, right? Well, they got Adam Eaton because Mike Rizzo was so caught up with wins above replacement. It was a horrible trade. I think Mike Rizzo's a really bad GM, by the way, and I think he should be canned. I mean, if I were the Lerners and I owned the Washington Nationals, I would fire his ass so quick. and bring in a GM, a guy who has new baseball ideas. Maybe you go try to entice a Dayton Moore to come over from Kansas City. Maybe you go try and entice, maybe an assistant to Jeff Lunhow in Houston. Do you try and entice maybe an Alex Anthopoulos? Do you try and go get a Jim Bowden, a guy who's been out of the game for a little bit, who might be hungry to get back in, and then from there hire your own manager? And I think that manager is Joe Girardi. I'm not saying he's going to be there for 5, 7, 8 years, but for where the Nationals are now, this is a very dangerous spot for Washington. They've got a lot of young players. You thought they had star players, Rendon, Soto, Robles, no Harper. They put the money into Patrick Corbin, a lefty, in the rotation. You have a ton of pitching. But the problem is, and I understand they're injured all the time, that's fine, but there are a lot of teams that have had injuries. The Yankees have had a plethora of injuries. They're in first place. The Dodgers have had some injuries. They're in first place. The Astros have missed Jose Altuve. I mean, there's a million teams that have had a bunch of injuries that you have to overcome those. Tampa Bay is right in the thick of things. They missed Blake Snell for a period of time. They're ace in last year's Cy Young winner. So you can only make excuses so much with the injuries. I think the situation right now for Washington is, again, it starts up here with ownership. You got to can Mike Rizzo, bring in a GM with brand new ideas, brand new philosophy to the organization, and then let him hire his own manager. I think that manager is Joe Girardi. Final thought on the Washington Nationals. What is Mike Rizzo doing right now, waiting in terms of contract extension talks with Anthony Rendon? Have you looked around baseball, Mike Rizzo? This is another reason why this guy is a complete joke as a general manager. Have you looked around baseball? The arbitration situations before guys get to free agency. Maybe we're going to have some labor trouble in a couple of years right now as well. Have you seen what's gone on? The Braves stole Ronald Acuna by extending him and giving him $100 million. They stole a guy who probably is going to win MVP or 2 or 3 before he's done. Look at the signing of Mike Trout by the LA Angels of Anaheim. I thought it was a bad signing by Trout because he's out on the West Coast and they're still a couple years away from winning. And he's the best player in the game, but they went out and gave him a bunch of money. There's been extensions across the board. Look at Aaron Nola in Philadelphia. There's been a bunch of those cases in baseball, and I don't know why the Washington Nationals are not at least starting the conversation. Again, I'm not saying sign him this minute for $300 million or whatever. I'm saying start the conversation. Because Anthony Rendon, to me, is a guy you don't want to lose. I think Anthony Rendon, you got to build. If I'm the Nationals, I'm building around Rendon, Soto, and Robles. Those are my big 3 guys, and then you've got, complementary pieces kind of in and out. You've got some veterans and some contracts you're waiting to kind of, end. And certainly, Trey Turner and some of the other young players. You've got Carter Kieboom and some other players waiting in the wings in AAA and Fresno and all the rest. That's fine, but I think that's the trio you got to build around. And without having Bryce Harper there, you've got that capital. You only have a couple more years of Max Scherzer. I'm telling you, this is a very dangerous time for the Washington Nationals. If they continue to shit the bed, they may trade both Rendon and Max Scherzer. I mean, that is what we could be coming down to here. We'll have to see. But it all starts at the top. They got to make a change with GM. The GM hires his own manager. You get a different philosophy in there. You get a different culture in there. And maybe that changes the way of the Washington Nationals. I'm Mike Lindsley. Video here on IGTV, Facebook, and YouTube is brought to you by Rosie's Corner. That's where I am here, right off of the Bartell Road exit, Route 11 in front of the Brewerton Bridge. If you're in and around Central New York, you got to get here. Their pizza, their wings, hot and cold subs to die for. Fish Friday with mac and cheese or coleslaw. Jody, Jason, and the gang doing an awesome job here. Get some desserts to go. They've got a bunch of great beverages in the cooler. Rosie's Corner is the official pizza shop of the ML Sports Platter. Thanks for watching. Hit me on Twitter at Mike L Sports, and as I always say, enjoy the games.